Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us. Happy Wednesday to you guys. We appreciate you guys being with us on this fine Wednesday as we get into some early playoff conversation, news around that getting dropped at On3 with the eligibility rules. How could that impact future playoffs? But we stay in the present. We look ahead to this season's college football playoff. Way too early, kind of picks, sleepers, surprises. On3's Andy Staples dropped his list. I'll share mine though and see if it differs at all as we get closer and closer to the season getting underway, which will be a nice reprieve from this offseason. Of course, so much change around the college football landscape, as well as just college athletics in general. And a lot of that has to do with off the field. We try to focus on the field, but it's very difficult in this world we live in with all the changes. We'll talk about eligibility rules getting blown up and changed. That really impacts a lot of college football teams in particular, it feels like, with the way the roster building is. Trying to take a peek at where you can, find these rosters, looking ahead and how they can certainly change overnight with some of these decisions around eligibility. So happy to have you with us on Wednesdays. We are presented by our friends at OPW Solutions. OPW Solutions, if you're in Arkansas, if you're in North Texas, if you're in Oklahoma, that is where they service commercial landscaping needs, power washing, snow and ice control, as well as parking lot striping and cleaning. They've got the whole pressure washing system for that as well. They can do it all for you. So make sure you're planning ahead as well for late in the fall. It'll be during football season. So you don't want to be saying, oh, who has my snow and ice control this winter? OPW Solutions does. You can give them a call at 214-444-2305 or email them info@opwsolutions.com. opwsolutions.com. Great friends of the show. We appreciate their support as always. Let's dive into the college football playoff picture. 12-team playoff remains for another year. We'll see if we can get major changes to that ahead of 2027, but that is for another day. Miami last year played for a national championship, falling to Indiana, just couldn't get it done. Will they get another team in the national championship game? Will they be able to get multiple teams in the college football playoff is honestly the more important question to me. And as we sit here, as it is June 24th, you're sitting here wondering, of course, well, what playoff plans do I have for my ACC team? We'll try to hit on that. The sleepers, the surprise teams that would truly surprise me as well. Let's jump into this with the best bets, of course. Miami's getting all the pub. They're getting all the national attention. I've kind of alluded to this. I do wonder how we see the change from somebody like Carson Beck, who has all the experience in the world, led Georgia to so many great heights when he was the quarterback there, came to Miami, and he almost delivered them a national championship in 1 year. Darian Mensah hasn't played on those types of stages. He's been one of the top passers statistically in college football, but he hasn't necessarily consistently been that elite type of player that a team needs to calm the waters and win them a high level of games. Duke lost 5 games, still won the ACC championship. Okay, they got that type of a performance they needed against a Virginia team that I felt like last year was generally overrated, but you got to give them credit for winning the games that were put in front of them. One of which they lost was without Chandler Morris. So that is worth noting. But nevertheless, this was not your typical ACC champion. And in particular, with their record against non-conference foes. Really disappointing performance by Duke in non-conference outside of their bowl game. But Darian Mensah goes to Miami now. He's got an ACC championship under his belt. He's been in that atmosphere. Can he deliver that to Miami? That is a big question because he's going to have to consistently be the best player on his team. That's what the quarterbacks have to be. They have to be the best player on their team. You could honestly make the argument that a Ruben Bain was for Miami last year. We've seen other players get close, but playing quarterback is so much more than just statistics. It's so much more than being the person that faces the media. It is having command of your offense, having command of the situation, and that is something that Carson Beck, despite no one being perfect in this world, was able to do and manage, and he helped manage that team so well to a national championship game appearance. Miami was able to change their game plan and go into College Station with the wins and go get a win. They were able to make that work, and then they rode that the rest of the way. And that's something that I wonder with Darian Mensah. Can you make sure that you don't try to have too many Heisman moments? And I mean that because he's going to be a Heisman Trophy, hopeful Heisman Trophy top pick, but he's also got the talent to be that. So trying to work against that and say, okay, we don't need that right now is very important. It's the same thing when you look at the other best bet in the conference, Miami, SMU, 1-2. SMU comes in with the second best odds to make the ACC championship game and win the ACC championship, with Miami, of course, right ahead of him. Kevin Jennings, a quarterback for SMU, has made some miraculous plays. He's put up statistics. He's going to end up being a record-setting quarterback at SMU, more so than he already is. And you look at him, and he got better last year at managing some of that playmaking, that improvisation that sometimes gets him in trouble. Wheels kind of fell off in the bowl game a little bit, but nevertheless, he comes back the best player on his team. You can make that stake in the ground to say Kevin Jennings is that best player. There's PJ Williams who gets the NFL buzz at the top of the first, near the top of the first round, but there's also other key players for them. Kevin Jennings is the best player on that team. He does so much. He proved that playing on one leg last year. I think that really stood out to me. His rush yardage dropped. He now has his whole arsenal, assuming he stays healthy. So you look at SMU adding that, injecting that back into their run game with a player like Kendrick Raphael. All of a sudden, you have that 1-2 punch you need. You have that 1-2 punch to have a great ground game. Miami knows they have that in Mark Fletcher. They've got talent at the running back position as well. I like SMU as that second best bet to make the ACC championship game because of those two really in the backfield. And then you're able to go out and you've added key pieces defensively. They feel like with the changes they've made, they've got coordinator changes, that'll be able to inject more life into that defense, get them right, and get them back on track as we look to them to be much improved. That is not a high bar to get to. They were bottom 4, 5, 3, whatever in the pass defense last year, but they were still good at stopping the run. If they can make some more routine plays on the back end in the secondary, they're going to be a much improved defense, period, end of story. It takes effort. It takes all those hard work, things like that, but it isn't a high bar to reach. It isn't a high bar to go from 130th or whatever all the way up to 70th. A 70th ranked pass defense for SMU probably means they're playing in the college football playoff last year. Let's be honest. There were a couple teams that were able to sling it around. Baylor dished them a loss. You had Cal, who threw it all over the yard on them for a while. Those two games right there made a difference, and other games, of course, too. But with SMU, they are a best bet. That's the reality of it as well. Whether you're a fan of another team listening to this show, whether you're an SMU fan hanging out with us on this Wednesday morning, we appreciate you guys that jump into the chat as well. Feel free to drop a comment in there. But when you look at these two teams, Miami and SMU, Miami is going to get all the glitz, the glam, and all of those things. SMU still waiting, in a sense, to really kick that door down and say, this is a new era. And they've done it in like, kind of like gave, if you're trying to, if you were a secret agent trying to see if somebody's behind the door that you're going to open, you're almost pushing it open and you're controlling it a little bit, and you're trying to see if it maybe hits someone instead of just slamming it and then, making a bunch of noise. SMU has done that with wins over Miami. They've done that with a undefeated ACC run in year one in 2024 in a college football playoff appearance and an ACC championship game appearance. They've done that with the AAC championship a few years ago. That is a few years ago now. SMU has staying power. We know that in this league, but they also have an opportunity to really say enough is enough. People have always kind of questioned the SMU future. They've not talked it up enough because odds makers are now sitting with SMU. We see things like SMU among the best bets, according to Andy Staples, of course. You see SMU getting a little bit more pub, but it's not just there yet. That's why they need to go out, and I've talked about this. That's why they need to go out and win their first 4 games. They need to get through September 4-0. Let that national buzz build up. They should be able to get to 5-0, then ride it into a bye week because they've got Boston College on October 2nd or 3rd. So you have those opportunities to make yourself this national name, and then you can let the rest of it play out and then see if you can get past a Notre Dame, or you can just make it back to the ACC championship, win it maybe, and get back to the college football playoff. I think that would go a long way in cementing so much for SMU. That has nothing to do with the best bet playoff picture. I just think they are built to go the long haul in this season, in this schedule that they have. It's very important what your schedule is. That's why Virginia was able to make it to the ACC title game last year. That's why, in part, Wake Forest was able to do what they were able to do last year. Their schedule was very forgiving, especially in non-conference. So you look at those best bets, those are them. They stand out. They've got so much talent around them. And they have schedules that are very gettable and manageable. Both, by the way, play Notre Dame. At very least, if both those teams beat Notre Dame, they've gone a hell of a long way to securing that best bet in the college football playoff, let alone where their ACC championship hopes stand. Andy Staples did talk about the serious contenders. I will differ with him a little bit here and on 2 of 3. Andy Staples has Clemson, Louisville, Virginia. I am only putting Louisville as a serious contender right now. And the reason why is because I just think Lincoln Kienholz, I am betting on him. That is a projection to see him be one of the better quarterbacks in this conference. But Isaac Brown, they've got a bunch of studs on defense. They added Trey Richardson at wide receiver. I mean, they have some serious talent on the offensive side of the ball. And I will maintain this. Jeff Brom in Louisville has one of the best rosters year after year as far as pure talent in this conference, and arguably, in the country. And that really stands out as a whole to me when you're talking about taking best bets, when you're talking about putting teams in position to be, those ACC championship game contenders. I don't see Clemson as a ACC championship game contender in a sense. I know you could sit here and say, well, Clemson has been able to, be one of the most consistent teams in the conference. They have. Dabo Swinney's incredible coach. And if this was just all about X's and O's and this was all about motivating anymore, I think he would have a really good shot. I just don't think with this roster, they're going to have as good of a shot. Number 1, they face Miami. Number 2, they do have Virginia Tech. Number 3, they have Georgia Tech also on there. And I have Georgia Tech as a serious contender still. So their schedule is a little bit gettable, but they also have Cal. And they got to go at Cal. That is one that stands out to me in a big way. They, by the way, go on a short week. They go Friday, September 25th, after hosting North Carolina. You got to go all the way out there. Backs are going to be against the wall. That seems like a Tosh Lupoi breakout. And so I'm going to talk about Virginia in a little bit because I view them as a sleeper, but I don't have Clemson as a contender. I have Clemson as a sleeper. I don't care what people say about the Clemson brand being, how is it, able to be a sleeper? When I look at this Clemson football team, I see a sleeper. I see a team that has a new quarterback. I see a team that does not have anything proven at the running back position. Their defense struggled last year. They've got a lot of things to fix. And just because they bring in a few transfers doesn't necessarily make me feel any better about it. Oh, by the way, Chad Morris is calling plays now. I don't love that with Christopher Vizina at quarterback. Maybe Tate Reynolds can do what Mason Heinchel did. Like, you could see, if you want to run a parallel here, this would be really interesting to see either how, I don't want to say right I would be, but how wrong I could be if Christopher Vizina takes off, certainly. But at LSU to open, Georgia Southern, North Carolina, at Cal, what if they start 2-2? Do you then go to Tate Reynolds if you haven't already after that Cal game? Because then, by the way, you're making Tate Reynolds' first career start at home against Miami. At least it's at home. Or would you stretch and say, because Dabo's loyal, would you stretch and say, okay, Christopher Vizina, you get the ball one more time. Tate is going to play maybe, but then you have a bye week. Then you have Charleston Southern, and then you're into the back half. And you could see Clemson reel off a bunch of wins in a row again, like they did this past year in the regular season. So, there's a lot to be sifted through. Remember, this is not ACC championship game as well. This is college football playoff discussion. So you get dealt a couple of losses, LSU, maybe Miami, maybe Cal, maybe Georgia Tech, maybe South Carolina. That is going to be really difficult for them to overcome for college football playoff hopes. So I do not view Clemson as a serious contender. I just don't. I don't think they have the roster for it. I view them as a sleeper. Their quarterback play comes together. They find a run game. They can do it. That's a lot though. That has to happen. The other contender that I'll add in there, I will add Cal. I think Cal is a college football playoff contender because they have such a good quarterback. He is going into his second year. They have an ability to go out and play another team with a first-time head coach in Bob Chesney and UCLA as their opener. That would put them in strong position to at least then go at Syracuse. See how that goes with somebody like Jaron Sagapolitelli. Sorry, it's always something with that name. Then you get Wagner. Then you get the opportunity against Clemson, which, by the way, you'd have a home game the week before Clemson versus Wagner. Then you're at UNLV. Then you're hosting Virginia Tech. Then you're going to host Wake Forest. That, like, a lot of things have to happen, but it's not out of the realm of possibility to see Cal 7-0 rolling into SMU. That puts you in a college football playoff contention. Now, I am high on Steve Angeli. I have Syracuse as a sleeper. I have them as one of my sleepers for the college football playoff because we saw what Steve Angeli was kind of headed towards last year. They don't necessarily have, I think, the roster that maybe they had when that season was starting to take off and take form before he tore his Achilles. UCLA, Syracuse, Wagner, Clemson would be the big linchpin one. UNLV, then hosting Virginia Tech and hosting Wake Forest. That's two key things. They're hosting there. That puts them, I think, in a position where they could be college football playoff contender. And then from there, talk about not necessarily I'm trying to think of the word manageable. At SMU is the big one. Then you're at NC State, which NC State just depends. It's like a box of chocolates. What are you going to get with them as far as their performance in conference? Then you're at UVA. I wonder, that is such a wild world because they go at SMU, they go at NC State, they go out by, and then at Virginia. But then they finish up at home their last two games. Stanford, which they're looking to avenge, and then Pitt. It's gettable. It's gettable. That's why I have them as a college football playoff contender. And we'll see. They could end up 10-2. They could end up, 7-5. They really could. They have a team that has a quarterback that when he's on, he's really tough to beat. Sleepers for me, this group I mentioned, I have Clemson, I have Virginia, and I have Syracuse. I have Clemson in there for reasons I already mentioned. I think they have that Clemson nature about them. I think they have a tough schedule for them for their roster this year. I don't necessarily see them as a contender for the college football playoff. Things have to come together perfectly. I don't think they have it offensively. I think they have some pieces that they're talking themselves into. They have some great wide receiver talent, but it is asking a lot. I think it is of this Clemson team. So if you're looking at the team, if you take away the logo, I have them as a sleeper. And I see a lot of things that have to happen and have to really step to another level to take this team to college football playoff world. And who knows? Like Christopher Vizina had a big day against SMU, but so did a lot of people through the air. So that is one thing that you've kind of have to you walk that line. It's similar with Jaron Kiowa Sagapolitelli, JKS, what he was able to do. Games like Louisville, games like SMU, he was able to will that team to wins. So at the same time, some inconsistency. Can they push through that? Sleepers, Virginia. When you have, I think, somebody who comes in like Bo Pribula, and he's gone through some injuries. I've been a big Bo Pribula guy. Just when he's been healthy and what he's been able to do as a quarterback, I think he just. Could you imagine if he had stayed at Penn State? It's just wild to think about. When he transferred from Penn State to Missouri, he ends up getting hurt and kind of battling through that. Played in 10 games, though. Just a tough guy. I think he's one of those players that Tony Elliott's going to love to coach, love to have on his team. Completed 67% of his passes last year, 1,900 yards, 11 touchdowns, nine picks, but still almost 300 yards on the ground. He has an opportunity to come into this Virginia team, which I believe lost I forget if it's a number of offensive linemen. I could be wrong on this, but I think they lost their offensive line coach as well. So some changes there. They have some guys to replace, but they still have a good enough roster to be a sleeper. And again, things have to go the right way for Virginia as well. It's not necessarily just about your roster. You have to see things come together. They host NC State to start. That's a big opportunity for them. Norfolk State, West Virginia, Delaware. They should be 4-0. Then they go at Florida State. They host Syracuse. Again, I have Syracuse as a sleeper. Big Syracuse battle. I like SMU's roster over them, and they got to go to Dallas. That's a tough one. Duke, Wake Forest, Cal, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, gettable. But Virginia's roster, not as much room for error. Think about all the games that were close last year that went their way. Think about FSU. Think about losing to NC State that didn't go their way. They lost to Wake Forest without Chandler Morris. They didn't get the bounces against Duke in the ACC championship game, but they really had to play perfectly. I mean, they beat North Carolina in overtime last year. They really had to play perfectly to have everything come together. I think their roster puts them more in a step back this year when it comes to the ACC. On another note, Syracuse, Steve Angeli, I think he's one of those dudes at quarterback. I mean, that's really why I have Syracuse as a sleeper. I think they just have this ability to really throw the ball around. I know they've made a bunch of changes. This could. I mean, I'm calling him a sleeper, so I'm not too worried about it. But you could see this one kind of blow up. That is one worry I have. Did Fran Brown pull the chute too quickly? Did he make a bunch of changes too quickly? Because Fran Brown is unapologetically Fran Brown and made those changes. And it's one of those things where if they don't work out, have you just wasted, like Steve Angeli could portal after this. I mean, I'm just speculating or whatever, but he could just say, you know what? All right, this did not work out. All of those decisions made, were not in the best interest for me. I'm gonna make a decision, make a change for me for my what could be his final year if I'm doing the math right. But those are my sleepers. I'll touch on a couple surprise teams here. But first, a question from user. This is I don't know what this is probably just whatever, but what are the odds both KJ, Kevin Jennings, and Darian Mensah are Heisman finalists? Of course, KJ is already going to win the Heisman, just asking hypothetically. Love the question. Thanks for chiming in. We appreciate all of you guys who are chimed in. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Make sure you guys are hanging out with us as we get closer and closer to ACC Media Days as well. We have a lot of content from ACC Media Days. So please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. The QR code's in the upper corner. This is thank you, Clary Diaz, for subscribing. Appreciate that. All right. The question, what are the odds? That would be a good one. I guess do we have to go to Vegas? We have to go lay a prop down on Kevin Jennings and Darian Mensah both being Heisman finalists. Where could you find those odds? I don't even know some of the predictive markets. Would it be Kalshi? Help me out there. Polymarket. We could do some of that and find out. But those two being Heisman finalists, I think a lot of that goes to, one, their teams have to win. They have to win big. They have to be on a clear path for a meeting in Charlotte. I think that stands out to me. If they both statistically are where they were last year, and maybe you add in a little bit of run for KJ just because he did not have that last year, I think we're going to see a potential that they could very well both be there. The Heisman Trophy ceremony, you're invited, I believe, before the conference championship game. I could be wrong on that. Somebody can certainly chirp me back in the comments there. But if you can get those two guys to lead their teams to wins over Notre Dame, and their crash course for ACC championship, crash course for college football playoff, I think that means both of them have played elite level ball, and they both have certainly earned spots to sit in New York. And it was kind of like Haynes King. I mean, Haynes King was kind of on that collision course for New York. And I think it was the College Game Day that was out at Oregon. Did they send shirts? And it was something like Haynes for Heisman. And it just came crashing down there with that loss. Did Georgia Tech lose to NC State? I think that was the week. And they sent the shirts and they lost that weekend. So no shirt sending from Mensah's crew and Jennings' crew. We're not doing that for the conference. I think college football is trending towards a little bit more of allowing some of the big names to get that leg up. I think Darian Mensah is going to have that leg up. I think Kevin Jennings has to be pretty dominant to start things out and make a name for himself. That's why it's so important for them to start 4-0 in September. So anyway, the odds are probably not great, the actual odds, but I'd love to see somebody get that. If you do, we can split it. I'll Venmo you. So we'll get that rocking and rolling. When you look to the true surprise teams, I think those teams for me in the ACC, I think I have to point to Duke. It would really surprise me if they made the college football playoff. And it would really be a work of magic, of sorcery from Manny Diaz, but he is a very good coach. And he got dealt a very poor card with the departure of Darian Mensah. And with Manny Diaz and Walter Yet, that would surprise me as a duo to go to the college football playoff. It would also surprise me if Georgia Tech went. And I don't mean this as a slight to the program of Brent Key and what he's building, but I am a touch skeptical that the magic is going to be there with Alberto Mendoza. If you've noticed, I am betting on a number of quarterbacks that have already done a lot of things, maybe outside of Lincoln Kienholz. But again, I think that's a testament to the Louisville roster that I think they have. Georgia Tech would really surprise me going to the college football playoff. Wake Forest would surprise me going to the college football playoff. And Virginia Tech would surprise me. And the rest, for the most part, probably outside of Pitt, I guess I should mention. Pitt just feels like, did somebody say that maybe it was Dave Dorian? Dave Dorian has finished between 7 and 9 wins pretty much every year at NC State. So consistently going to bowl games and things like that. But Pitt is not of a similar variety because they have won an ACC championship. I guess I probably should have included them in the sleepers because they lost so much, like Rasheem Biles, some of those elite level players that they had on that team. But this is where you kind of get into surprise mode. It would surprise me for Georgia Tech to get there. I think defensively they lost so much, or excuse me, they had so many changes that they had to make. They bring in new coordinators on both sides of the ball, but you have a new quarterback, a first-time quarterback, and Justice Haynes is going to have to carry the load. And they've got some really good runners, things of that nature. But it's just it seems like there's a lot more to do there than maybe we're giving credit to. And who knows? Brent Key's a great coach. Love what he brings to the table. I think next year could be a year that they could be contenders. That's my opinion. But all right, I think that wraps up, generally speaking, a lot of the college football playoff talk. Let's lean on Virginia Tech one more time. I think Virginia Tech has so much new. I think so much change in the culture. I just don't see it. You could call them a sleeper. I would say surprise as well. I just didn't want any Tech fans to think we were ignoring them. They have some nice pieces. They have made some major changes. I like Ethan Grunkmeyer as somebody who can kind of build the culture offensively for James Franklin into what he wants it to be. But I think it will be a monumental task for them to see them in the college football playoff. So anyway, it's a lot of fun to talk about this stuff. I love breaking down the rosters. We're going to get some guests on here soon to kind of tee up ACC Media Days as well, look at some teams around the conference, but also we're going to be able to, do a lot of the in-person interviews. We should find out here very soon who all is going to Media Days. I'm kind of almost waiting for it to come through on my phone at some point today or tomorrow, kind of this week in general. Where then we'll have the actual players who will be in attendance. So, look, guys, also want to remind you guys about our friends at Sportsmo app. Make sure you guys have it downloaded for football season. You can actually give back to your favorite college football team with our friends at Sportsmo.
Sportsmo lets you make a more direct impact on the game because it lets you, the fans, fund your favorite college football teams in a straightforward way. In a you win and I'll give way. In a I need you to show me your running game is alive and then I'll donate way. These real-time tax-deductible microfunds lead to impact your team can feel. Every cent you send mixes with every drop of sweat they put in. Form your squad. Boost your friends when a play comes through. A new way to follow the game. And cha-ching, your favorite team. So what do you say, difference makers? Ready to power the play? Sportsmo. Download today. Let's smo.
That's right. Check out our friends at Sportsmo. Make sure you have it downloaded ahead of college football season. Tom, good to hear from you again. Looks like the NFL told Brendan Sorsby where he could go. Hate to see it. Sarcasm. I feel for him because his dream is suddenly over. Maybe he could play in the UFL, but again, I don't see it. People bet on the UFL. Brandon Sorsby getting denied a supplemental draft is not, I think it's perfect for the NFL. They weren't, scheduled to hold one. I thought the NFLPA just absolutely crushed them in their letter to him that got shared on social media and basically said, you've shown no remorse. You didn't really document what's going on. And, that just doesn't seem like, something we want to do. And so they just said, we're not going to hold the supplemental draft. And I do think for Brendan Sorsby, this is a gut punch, but you can't do this. You can't what is it? Compromise the integrity of the actual results. And whether it was harmless in the grand scheme of things, sure, but that's just what we know. And that's where he immediately gets it struck down. So feel for him, but don't really feel for him because he brought it on himself. So when you think about something that was brought on during COVID, we saw all the extensions or we saw lawsuits and we still see lawsuits. But one thing that was talked about as we continued to see 28-year-olds playing college sports every now and again wasn't that widespread. It wasn't that big of a deal. But we did see college coaches say, hey, we want to get back to a new eligibility model. And they finally did. The NCAA did vote to approve the new age-based eligibility model that does limit players to 5 years. So under the new rules, players get 5 years of eligibility to be completed within the first 5 years of your high school graduation or an athlete's 19th birthday, whichever comes first. So there would be some limited exceptions for religious missions and military service, maternity leave, and things like that. But it also eliminates red shirts around college sports. So when you're in college, you should be playing. It's a different world now than it was a while ago when not everybody had access to training, and still not everybody has access to training and things of that nature. But weightlifting, speed training, all that stuff is much more year round. It is much more accessible in a sense. Somebody's helping you. There are very rare cases where you're like, man, it'd be nice if that guy could redshirt and not play and still have, those 4 more years, but just let them have 5 years. That way you can get their feet wet in the games. You can do all those things, and everybody's path is still going to be different, but it still helps you as a college football team because you have the whole redshirt threat across college sports that was there with the transfer portal. Now that's gone. So now you can sprinkle in players throughout the year. You keep their eye on the prize. You keep some of those younger guys maybe called up for special teams. Maybe you see them emerge in practice during the season and you can play them and not sweat it. You just get them ready to rock and roll. So it's a great move here. I think I don't see many downsides at all to this. I don't see many things that people are like, that shouldn't be that way. Look, if you're going to play college sports, you should generally be a college-aged athlete. That's not the whole point, but that's part of the point here. And I like the age-based rules. I do like that, they're just kind of doing it where whatever benefits you most if you're in school right now, you get. And if you're in school already, you're good to go. It stinks that we won't see some of those MLB type stories where they get to go pro and then come back. Those are just fun more than anything. And I wonder if we'll see maybe a tweak there where those players have to walk on or something down the line. But nevertheless, this is a good blanket waiver to make this be the kind of standard. So it's going to be a great situation, I think, for college sports to kind of get back on track here, ditch a lot of the COVID, eighth year players in college sports. And from what I've read, there isn't really going to be exceptions. It's just going to be straight up like you have 5 years and that's it. So it's going to be a pretty cool deal. This will be something that is enacted now. So everybody is already working on this. If you're already in school and enrolled and ready to rock and roll, this applies to you. But it is the one that benefits you the most. So whether you, play 5 years when maybe you wouldn't have had another year next year in 2027 or beyond, those things can still happen. Tom, I hope the occasional moments when a 6-year-old who missed his college career can play a down or two. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Those are some of those D3, D2 stories that you hear about. Those are what we're talking about. So it's gonna be a good thing. College sports I've said this before on the show. There are a lot of doomers out there. There are a lot of like, this is gonna get blown up. We're not far off from being on track. Got to fix calendar a little bit. Got to move up the end of football season. Got to make a couple changes here. I think week 0 would be one. I don't love expanding the playoff, but I also get it. We're not far off. We're not far off. We need better contracts. We need better enforceable contracts. I hope this helps a little bit. I don't think it really impacts those, but we're not far off. So another good step here for the NCAA to take. And now we have age-based eligibility. There will be lawsuits, but what else is new? I think those are going to largely be just kind of passed right over, and we'll see how they go. If there's a medical excuse or whatever, but we'll see. It's a good result for college sports. So that's our show for today. I appreciate all of you guys who chimed in the chat, multiple of you today on this Wednesday. Appreciate OPW Solutions and Sports Mode for sponsoring the show. This is All Access AM. Thanks for watching. I'm Billy Embody.